Hey, economic warriors. It's your boy, the boss of economics, back to slice through the government's latest PR stunts and economic disasters like a hot knife through overpriced, taxpayer-funded butter. Today, we're diving into the FDA's shiny new toy, Elsa, their generative AI tool. Sounds cool, right? But hold up, fam, this isn't just about tech wizardry, it's a masterclass in government inefficiency, economic mismanagement, and a glaring spotlight on the recessionary mess they've dragged us into. Buckle up, because we're about to go from the surface-level hype to the deep, dark economic truths they don't want you to see. Alright, folks, let's start with the headlines. On June 2, 2025, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, rolled out Elsa, a generative AI tool they claim will improve efficiency across their operations. FDA Commissioner Marty Makary was practically glowing, bragging that Elsa was ahead of schedule and under budget. Oh, wow, Marty, a government project that's under budget. Should we give you a medal, or just ask why every other government program seems to bleed taxpayer dollars like a bad horror movie? Now, don't get me wrong, AI is dope. Elsa's supposed to speed up clinical protocol reviews, shorten scientific evaluations, and even help the FDA decide which drug factories to inspect. It can summarize adverse events, compare packaging inserts, and keep sensitive data locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's the thing, economic warriors, this isn't a dream, it's a distraction. While the FDA is busy hyping up Elsa, the US economy is spiraling into a recessionary dumpster fire, and the government's mismanagement is pouring gasoline on the flames. Let's break this down, layer by layer, from the surface-level PR stunt to the deep economic rot underneath. First off, let's talk about the surface-level hype. The FDA is selling Elsa as the ultimate efficiency machine. They're saying it'll cut down the time it takes to approve drugs, normally a grueling 6 to 10 months, and help them prioritize inspections. Great, right? Faster drug approvals mean more treatments, more innovation, and maybe even lower healthcare costs for the average Joe. But hold up, does anyone actually believe the government is suddenly going to become efficient just because they slapped some AI on the problem? Here's the reality, fam, the FDA's drug approval process has been a bureaucratic nightmare for decades. According to a 2024 report from the Government Accountability Office, GAO, the FDA's average time to approve a new drug has actually increased by 15% over the past decade, despite all their fancy tech upgrades. And let's not forget the cost, drug companies spend an average of $2.6 billion to bring a new drug to market, with a huge chunk of that going to navigating the FDA's red tape. So, forgive me if I'm skeptical that Elsa is suddenly going to fix a system that's been broken since bell-bottoms were a thing. But here's the kicker, even if Elsa works as advertised, it's not going to solve the bigger economic problems. Faster drug approvals might help Big Pharma's bottom line, but what about the rest of us? Healthcare costs are still skyrocketing. U.S. healthcare spending hit $4.8 trillion in 2024, or $19.723,000 a year on healthcare, up 7% from 2023, per the Kaiser Family Foundation. So, while the FDA is busy patting itself on the back, the rest of us are stuck choosing between groceries and insulin. Thanks, government efficiency. Now, let's dig a little deeper, economic warriors. Why is the FDA rolling out Elsa now? Is it really about efficiency, or is it a desperate attempt to look like they're doing something, anything, while the economy crumbles around them? Spoiler alert, it's the latter. Let's talk about the recession. By mid-2025, the US economy is in a full-blown economic downturn. GDP growth has been negative for 2 consecutive quarters, officially meeting the technical definition of a recession, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA. Unemployment is creeping up, hitting 6.2% in May 2025, per the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, a far cry from the 3.7% we saw in 2023. Inflation, meanwhile, is still stubbornly high at 5.1%, despite the Federal Reserve's aggressive rate hikes, which have jacked up the federal funds rate to 6.5%, the highest since 2001. And here's where the government's mismanagement comes in. Remember all those trillions of dollars they printed during the COVID-19 pandemic? The $6 trillion in stimulus packages, the endless quantitative easing, the Build Back Better boondoggles. Well, surprise, surprise, that money didn't just disappear. It fueled inflation, devalued the dollar, and set the stage for the stagflation mess we're in now. And what's the government's response? More PR stunts like Elsa, while they ignore the real problems, like the fact that small businesses, the backbone of the economy, are dropping like flies. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, 25% of small businesses have closed permanently since 2023, and another 30% are at risk of shutting down by the end of 2025. Now, let's zoom in on the FDA's role in this economic disaster. The FDA isn't just a bystander, it's an active player in the government's mismanagement playbook. For years, the FDA's slow, bloated approval process has stifled innovation, driven up costs, and kept life-saving drugs out of the hands of patients. Take the example of gene therapies, which have the potential to cure diseases like sickle cell anemia and muscular dystrophy. According to a 2024 study by the Milken Institute, the FDA's regulatory delays have cost the U.S. economy $1.2 trillion in lost productivity and healthcare savings over the past decade. And that's not even counting the human cost, thousands of patients who died waiting for treatments that were stuck in FDA limbo. But it gets worse. The FDA's inefficiencies don't just hurt patients, they hurt the economy. The pharmaceutical industry employs over 800,000 people in the U.S. and contributes $1.4 trillion to the economy annually, according to the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, PHRMA. Every delay, every unnecessary regulation, every bureaucratic hoop is a job lost, a company bankrupted, a community devastated. And now, in the middle of a recession, the FDA thinks the answer is to throw some AI at the problem and call it a day. Give me a break. But let's not stop at the FDA, economic warriors. The FDA's Elsa stunt is just one symptom of a much bigger disease, government mismanagement on a colossal scale. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve, which has been playing fast and loose with monetary policy for years. Those ultra-low interest rates they kept in place for a decade. They created asset bubbles in housing, stocks, and even crypto. And when inflation started rearing its ugly head in 2022, what did they do? They waited too long to raise rates and then overcorrected, slamming the brakes on the economy and triggering the recession we're in now. And don't even get me started on fiscal policy. The Biden administration's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan in 2021 and the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act were sold as economic stimulus, but all they did was pour more fuel on the inflationary fire. Meanwhile, the national debt has ballooned to $36 trillion, or 130% of GDP, according to the Congressional Budget Office, CBO. That's a debt burden that's crushing future generations, and for what? So the government can fund more pet projects and PR stunts like Elsa? So, what's the real solution, economic warriors? Here's a radical idea: how about the government gets out of the way? Instead of throwing taxpayer money at shiny AI tools, how about streamlining the FDA's approval process, cutting unnecessary regulations, and letting the free market do its job? According to a 2024 study by the Mercator Center, deregulating the FDA could save $500 billion in healthcare costs and create 200,000 jobs over the next decade. Imagine that, actual economic growth, instead of more government PR fluff. And while we're at it, how about the Federal Reserve stops trying to play God with the economy? Let interest rates be set by the market, not by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats in Washington. And how about Congress stop spending money we don't have on programs we don't need? According to the CBO, balancing the federal budget could reduce the debt to GDP ratio to 80% by 2035, freeing up trillions of dollars for private investment and economic growth. Here's the bottom line, fam: the FDA's Elsa is just the latest in a long line of government distractions. While they're busy hyping up their AI savior, the economy is tanking, healthcare costs are soaring, and the average American is getting squeezed harder than ever. This isn't about efficiency, it's about control, power, and covering up the government's epic failures. So, economic warriors, don't fall for the hype. Keep your eyes on the real issues: government mismanagement, reckless spending, and a regulatory system that's strangling innovation and growth. And remember, the solution isn't more government, it's less. Until next time, this is the boss of economics, signing off. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and keep fighting the good fight. Oh, and don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the only thing the government hates more than accountability is an informed public.